Thank you. So, good morning. Oh, come on. Good morning. Oh, no. Come on. Good morning. Ah, right. Okay, come on. Wakey. I know the coffee break is after this keynote, so hopefully we can kind of get a bit more caffeinated after this thing. So thank you very much. I'd like to thank the organizers of PyCon Portugal for inviting me to give this talk. I feel very honored to come to Portugal. So I'm Nicholas. I'm a principal engineer at Anaconda, where I work on the PyScript team. PyScript, in case you don't know, is based on a technology called WebAssembly, or WASM, and that's essentially a sandbox virtual machine that browsers understand, among other technologies. And what we do is we take CPython and MicroPython, compile them to WebAssembly, and turn and give you PyScript, which is a platform for Python in the browser. So now the Python that you use on your desktop is now available in a browser, which means that now Python is available wherever there's a browser, which means now Python is available everywhere. So how do you deploy your code to grandma? You give her a URL, basically, now. I'd also like to thank Anaconda for supporting me in coming here. That's very important. I'd also like to say, actually, we were talking about come to Braga. One of the things that I really enjoyed about visiting this place, I've only been here 24 hours, but the weather is awesome. It's just like England. It rains all the time. So I want to find out a little bit about you folks as well. Now, given that we're in Portugal, I imagine most of you are Portuguese. If you're Portuguese, put your hand up. Oh, okay, cool. I'm guessing, given we're in the Iberian Peninsula, a lot of you are going to be Spanish. If you're Spanish, put your hands up. Oh, there's a one lone Spaniard here. Woohoo! Okay, further afield, because I think there's about 60% of you are Portuguese. I'm trying to work out where you're from. So French? Ah, zut alors. So I'm British. Any more Brits in the room? Okay, a few of you. Okay, and Germany? Okay. The rest of Europe? Rest of Europe. Okay, sorry, I'm being a bit arbitrary here. And then the rest of the world? Awesome. Welcome. Okay, so I'll start now, and I have to admit something. When I told my workmates that I was going to be speaking at PyCon Portugal, my Portuguese colleague, Fabio, posted this on our team Slack channel. Now, could somebody explain this to me, please? After the talk, yesterday evening, my friend Tiago mentioned codfish, and I said, just hold that thought. You're going to have to tell me about that later on. Okay. So, anyway, who am I? Well, I'm really a musician. This is me in my natural habitat. For most of my teenage years, I was practicing hours and hours a day, which is what you need to do to become a musician. And in my early 20s, I played professionally as a freelance musician. So yeah, this is me in my natural habitat. I'm a heavy brass specialist. I play the tuba. So anything loud and low in an orchestra, that's me, okay? But that's not a great career move, because it turns out I'd have had more chance of work if I were actually born an ape in the UK, because there are in fact more orangutans in the UK than there are tuba jobs in the UK. And further research tells me, this is data science, folks, further research tells me that the monkey would actually have a far better quality of life than I would have, a classical musician. So, for instance, the orangutan, free bananas, 0 work hours, you've just got to sit there scratching yourself or whatever, and no training necessary to be an orangutan in the UK. Whereas a classical musician, it's actually very, very low pay, it's late night work, and it takes years of intense practice to become a classical musician. And this is why my online avatar is usually always an orangutan. So if you ever see an orangutan in GitHub, it's probably me leaving my paw prints, okay? So how did I get from music into code? So Like most unemployed musicians, I became a music teacher. This is me with my amazing form. Many years ago, nobody sent me the memo about the school dress code that we had to wear a necktie. There we go. Anyway, it was immortalized in that photo. And at 23, I was made a head of department responsible for the music curriculum in a secondary school in the UK. And for most of my 20s, I spent my time teaching not just teenagers, but adults and music to, kindergarten level as well. So I've taught the widest possible range of folks. Music, I also have an MA in philosophy of education as well. And then when my own children arrived, I decided perhaps it would be a good career move to do something that didn't involve children, so I had enough energy for the kids, my own children. So I did an MSc in computing. My dissertation was on artificial neural networks and genetic algorithms. That was 20 years ago, so things have changed rather a lot since that. And that got me my first software development job. And now that I'm an engineer, I still pay attention very much to my interest in teaching through my passion for Python in education. And this is me at, I think, EuroPython 2019 at Bilbao, and I was running the Beginner's Day. Okay. So why? Why this interest? Well, asking what sort of education we want is the same as asking what sort of community we want to become. For education is the process through which we interact with our future colleagues, collaborators, and friends. And this is why education is so important. Thinking about education is a form of paying attention to the future. It's how you change things. It's also how we embody the what and the how that engineers should pay attention to in their work. As a principal engineer, I'm a role model or a mentor to more junior folk, and I should embody what it is to be an engineer. And this is how folks learn to become engineers, by copying what engineers do. This reminds me of Aristotle in the Nicomachean Ethics. He said, if you want to be a builder, build stuff. If you want to be a musician, play music, okay? If you want to be an engineer, do engineering things, okay? Rather than play along. And so how we pay attention to these sorts of things is what we'll be exploring in this talk. So let's start by paying attention to the sort of tools beginners may encounter if they want to become coders. And since beginners want to do the stuff that we all do as engineers, we should pay attention to the tools that we use. So perhaps the most obvious tool that we could look at is the code editor, because that's where the rubber of the tire hits the road, as it were. That's where the coding happens. What's this? Vim. Okay, good. Now, you imagine it's your first day at work, you've never been a coder in your life, and you get presented with this. It's not particularly friendly. The learning curve is like that, okay? Trying to quit the editor is a kind of a whole adventure game in itself, okay? And it's quite intimidating. Now, just for balance, I actually code in VI, but the only reason I do so is because in the mid-90s, that was the only thing that was installed on the university computers for code editing, and I have muscle memory now, okay? I would need a lobotomy to change how I type, okay? And so to a beginner coder, it kind of looks a little bit like this. It looks a bit dangerous. I'm not quite sure what it does. There's no context. What do I do? Help me, help me, help me here, okay? So we're talking about an uber minimalist, very unhelpful way of engaging with the code. Now, if you go in the other direction, we get something like, what's this? VS Code. Who uses VS Code? Okay, that's most people. Okay, actually, just as out of interest, how many of you use VI? Okay, Emacs? That's the right answer, yes. So this is VS Code. If you're a beginner developer, where do you type the code? It's not entirely obvious. How do you run your code? What does everything mean? Okay, it's kind of information overload. And that's okay if you're an experienced software engineer you're probably all sitting there going, of course, Nicholas, you type your code here, there, and everywhere. But if you're looking at this with beginner's eyes, it looks very intimidating. In fact, it looks like the flight deck of the space shuttle, okay? There are buttons and knobs and all sorts of things happening, and there's data coming at you. And it should, because if you're a pilot of a space shuttle, you really should know what you're doing, okay? So how do you get people to engage and pay attention to coding in the right way if they are beginners? So I'm going to introduce you to Mu. Mu is an open source project that I'm involved in. Mu is a beginner-friendly Python editor. And I created it with an idle but dangerous thought one Sunday afternoon when it was raining and I had nothing to do, and I thought, how hard can it be to write a code editor? And actually, it's taken on a life of its own. It's been downloaded millions of times. It's been used in educational textbooks, lots of learning resources, and in videos on the net as well. If you use Adafruit products for CircuitPython, you're probably going to be using Mu. And it's used in all sorts of places as well. From schools in rural China, I have a very cute video of a bunch of Chinese kids who've been taught by rote how to say in English, "Hello, Nicholas, we love Python, we love Mu, woo!" So that was rural China. I also got contacted by somebody at an Ivy League university in the US, an economics professor who uses Mu to introduce his economics students to coding in Python. Because, of course, while we might be developers, software engineers here, Python is used by lots of people in orthogonal disciplines as well, where they need coding. This is why paying attention to how do non-professional coders engage with code that's why it's so important. But who needs Mu? Well, Mu came out of something called the Microbit project. And it was interesting listening to the gentleman earlier on talking about how do you train talent and, develop it and cultivate it and things. And in 2015, the BBC, the national broadcaster in the UK, decided that they were going to give out 1 million small Internet of Things computing devices, and this is what this microbit is. It's about the size of a credit card. It has, as you can see, an LED-based screen. It's got a couple of buttons, and there are sensors on the back, and there's a little Bluetooth radio and a compass and things like that. So every 11-year-old in the UK got one in 2015, and they're still used in schools in the UK and actually all over the world now for learning how to code. And so the Python Software Foundation was involved in this project because, unsurprisingly, the BBC heard from teachers that they wanted to be able to use Python with this. So I was the person who helped coordinate this on behalf of the Python Software Foundation. I worked with Damien George, who is the creator of MicroPython, which is a version of Python that runs on microcontrollers, and we worked together to make the tooling and the APIs and the version of Python that runs on this sort of thing. Okay, and so Mu was born out of that project. Okay, because as a hopefully conscientious engineer, I asked teachers, well, what do you need? What would you like? What do your students need? I went to watch and observe lessons and see how interactions were happening and looking at the bumps in the road and the way that people were encountering difficulties, and if we could change things just slightly to help them make progress. Okay, so when we're developing Mu, we actually obsess an awful lot over teacher and student feedback. This is probably the most teachery thing you're going to see for months, okay? Somebody pointing at a whiteboard. In fact, this is very meta. You've got a person on stage pointing at a whiteboard where somebody is pointing at a whiteboard. I mean, how funny is that? So this is a head of computing at a school that's rather local to me, and he uses Mu as a pedagogical tool, as a presentation tool, as well as the tool that the students in his classroom use for coding. Okay, now you might think, well, great, okay, well, you talk to your users, blah, 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 blah. Well, it's actually fascinating if you talk to people and ask them, well, what is it you need? If you pay attention to people. And a sort of a funny story is that I was working with a group of teachers. I'd presented mu, and they were like, yeah, great, that's fine, Nicholas, but those of us at the back of the room can't read what you're writing when you're presenting with mu. What we really need in our classrooms is a zoom button, so we can zoom in and zoom out as we need to, so kids can see at the back of the class. Now, I'd never thought about this. The only time I'd ever used an editor was looking at it like this, on the screen immediately in front of me. I'd never thought that a code editor might be used as a pedagogical tool for presenting code. So it took, I mean, let's face it, adding a zoom and an unzoom button to a code editor takes about 5 lines of code, because essentially all I'm doing is changing some CSS in the background. So on-click this button, increase the number. On-click that other button, decrease the button. Magic happens, and by the end of the evening, I'd got this first version of the zoom working, and the reaction from teachers was, oh, how did you do that? That's amazing. We really need to have this in our code editors, because they had been used to using idle, where if you want to change the font size in idle, you have to go File, Settings, Editor, thingy-majig, what's it, this menu comes up, you click a random number, then the menu disappears, and then you've got the wrong font size, and so you have to go da-da-da-da-da. And you do that in your lesson, and you have 30 13-year-olds with the attention span of a goldfish, and you've lost them, okay? Keeping people's attention, and believe me, I'm speaking from experience as a head of music, keeping people's attention is very important in a classroom. We also pay lots of attention to accessibility as well. So mu works with screen readers. We also make sure that our colour scheme is friendly for folks who are colourblind, and we also work with folks who have advised us about dyslexia and how that is affected, how easy it is to read, to be literate with your coding if you have dyslexia. So there's all sorts of things that we try and do in the background with mu. And we also pay close attention to cultural context as well. When I went to Paris to speak to some French computing teachers, they told me that it's not the case that Python is an English programming language where we're using if and else, you know, things like that in the language. It's the fact that all the tools and all the stuff around the language is in English and not French that is a problem. So we make sure that mu is very easy to translate into other languages. And this is, of course, French, which is a delightful language. I'm especially pleased that the French word for debugger is debugger, which is basically the same as English, but with a funny French accent. And also, in another delightful turn of events, all the translations we have in mu, we've had more pull requests about the French translation than any other, because the French can't agree on what the French translation should be. Thus, kind of conforming to every possible stereotype of the French and how they get on with each other. They're all just so grumpy about their language, which is really quite funny for me. So, by paying attention to mu in a certain way, we're demonstrating a certain sort of coding culture. And mu is a means of passing on such a culture as well. It's a teaching tool. And that culture is open, collaborative, and supportive. And thus, so is mu. We embody this. And mu is why I'm here in Portugal. Tiago, could you stand up, please? Okay, Tiago, yeah. Excellent standing up there, Tiago. Please sit down. Yeah. So mu is also a Tiago core contributor. No, change the nouns around. Tiago is also a mu core contributor. Okay, and Tiago and I intend to work on mu while we're here. And here we are enjoying a cup of coffee together yesterday while it was raining, while it was like England. Okay, and we're also helped by our friends Vasco, who is Portuguese, Carlos, who has a Portuguese granny, and Tim, who has absolutely nothing to do with Portugal. And we mostly do it for fun. It's rewarding. It's good to hear. It's good to get videos at random from Chinese teachers in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of kids going, woo, Python. Okay? It's really rewarding. So what I want to do now is just change things a little bit. Now, let's explore further how the way we pay attention as coders influences our work. And we're going to start with, well, one of the gods of computer science. Who's this? Dijkstra. Okay. One of the kind of like founding fathers of computer science. The algorithms that are used to figure out network traffic on the internet are basically this dude, okay, in the 1970s. But he was rather a thoughtful, philosophical chap as well. And Dijkstra said that programming was, and I'm quoting, a practical exercise in the effective exploitation of one's powers of abstraction. Now, what does that mean? Well, abstraction is the means by which we model the world that we encounter. And the world that we encounter depends on how we pay attention to it. Okay? And in the world of programming, here's the tongue twister, it turns out that paying attention to paying attention is worthy of paying attention. Okay? So let's pay attention to a story about encouraging others to pay attention in a certain sort of a way. So, with a world full of code of questionable quality and purpose, someone somewhere thought such software was a good idea. So let's reflect upon what happens as we engage, disengage, or maybe even misengage with the world through our Python code. Because there's a lot of danger in this process. And the danger is that we are finding problems that don't exist. We are creating thoughtless solutions to those non-existent problems. And those solutions are written with spaghetti code. And we're measuring the success of such solutions in dubious sorts of ways. And in order to justify this giant mess that we call programming, we're following rather interesting best practices. So let's cover each of these problems in turn. So problems that don't exist. I don't know about you, but as software engineers, and I'm just as guilty as everybody else of this, software engineers are guilty of pathologizing the world. What do I mean by that? I mean, put simply, as engineers, we often see the world as a series of problems that require solutions. Now, as you know, I have a background in philosophy, and I'm actually more inclined to agree with the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, who famously said, well, life is not a problem to solve, but actually a reality to experience. For example, as I've already shown, I like drinking coffee with my friends. And I have a mocha pot, just like this one, at home. And I've had that for years. It's kind of been following me around. And it's just like a comfort blanket at breakfast, really, for me. It's part of the ceremony of my morning routine. I make my wife and I a cup of coffee together. It's a nice thing to do. It smells nice in the kitchen when I do this. And there's a certain sort of gentleness about doing what this chap's doing on the video here. There's something rather wonderful about making a coffee with a mocha pot. And I guess, though, that there's a problem. There's a problem if you're in a hurry, because it takes several minutes to make a mocha pot coffee, okay? But I would argue, but why rush a coffee? If you're drinking coffee quickly, you're probably doing it wrong. But anyway, some people thought it was a good idea that we needed to have instant coffee. So, instant coffee isn't so much a thoughtless solution as a tasteless one. Like the annoying artificially intelligent doors from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books that swoosh with the satisfaction of a job well done, we have instant coffee. Now, hands up. Has anyone ever had a nice cup of instant coffee? Okay, you're kind of going like that, hedging your bets, okay? We'll say no. But I guess instant coffee has one advantage, and that's speed. But like I said, do you want speed with a cup of coffee? Okay. It does have many multiple disadvantages. It tastes like dishwater is perhaps the most important one of those. Okay? But never fear, tech will save us. Yes, we can have great tasting coffee through the convenience of the touch of a button on a machine with all the beauty of a collection of spare parts from a Dalek from Doctor Who. This video here is 5 minutes long, and you don't even get a cup of coffee at the end of it. It's just how do you set up the damn coffee machine, okay? And by the end of it, you can press a button and coffee comes out, but you've lost something as well. You've lost that ceremony of coffee making, that gentle, I'm going to make Mary a coffee. It's kind of how I, as a husband, kind of show Mary that I love her and all of that sort of stuff. It's a nice part of my day. But this, to me, it looks about as much fun as writing YAML to configure, I don't know, a Kubernetes cluster or something like that, okay? And again, this definitely reminds me of the useless sort of technology in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, okay? All these strange machines that pollute that universe. Talking of which, this stuff kind of follows me around, and it was following me around on my way here yesterday. Now, I noticed this device, I'll tell you what it does in a minute. See if you can guess. I noticed this device stuck to the wall of the bathroom cubicle I was using at London Stansted Airport whilst getting my flight here to Portugal. And I thought, this is rather funny, so I took a photograph of it. It's called an IP. I'm not making this, literally, it's on the photo. And it's some kind of robotic flushing thing. Okay? What I want to know is, if the fuse goes, what happens? Didn't anyone think of that? Also, it kind of gives off HAL 9000 vibes to me, which is perhaps not what you want when you're trying to relax in a toilet. Okay, and depending on what wall you're facing, and gentlemen will appreciate this, the reflective mirror-like sheen is rather off-putting when you can see yourself in it. So, I was intrigued to find out what I would find at the Portuguese end of my flight. So, like a good engineer on a usability exercise, I went to find out. I just want to say bravo, Portugal. This is the right answer. Just press the damn button, please. So, I recently reread Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is why it's sort of appearing in the talk now. And when I read the quote I'm about to read you, I felt seen as a software engineer. And this quote is about the Sirius Cybernetics Corporation, who make all sorts of convenient technical solutions in the Hitchhiker's Guide universe, like those doors that slide open with a sigh. Okay? Here's what Douglas Adams said about this company. It is very easy to be blinded to the essential uselessness of their product by the sense of achievement you get from getting them to work at all. In other words, and this is the rock-solid principle on which the whole of the corporation's galaxy-wide success is founded, their fundamental design flaws are completely hidden by their superficial design flaws. Bingo. The utter uselessness of the technology distracts our attention from the mistake of ever creating such a thing in the first place. I was actually bought a coffee machine, which is really why I was kind of hating on the coffee machine earlier. And it took about an hour to set up our damn coffee machine. And after 3 months of using it and missing our morning coffee routine together, it kept bleeping at us, which is the worst thing you want in the morning, because it wanted us to change a filter, or something needed reconfiguring, or the time had run out, or blah, 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 blah. It made making coffee an unpleasant experience. Now, nobody asked if it was a good idea to create a technical solution to the problem of making coffee. There likely isn't a problem, if I'm honest with you, from my point of view. Rather, folks feel so relieved that the damn machine makes them a coffee that they forget they probably don't need the machine in the first place. This kind of reminds me of, the urban myth about NASA and Russia during the kind of 1960s heyday of the space race. And the Americans spent millions of dollars on making an ink pen that worked in zero gravity. What did the Russians do? They used a pencil. The same overcomplication and blindness to superficial problems at the expense of fundamental problems also happens when we write code. So consider the classic joke about how to write Hello World. It puts into focus how the way we pay attention to our work has influence over the quality of the work that we produce. So, of course, we're talking to a beginner coder, and we say, in the classic way of getting folks introduced to a programming language, I want you to print Hello World, while in Python, print, parentheses, quotes, Hello World is what you do. But after a while, you become more experienced, and you hear about kind of abstraction, and I'm going to kind of put a black box for hello-ness in my code, and so I'm going to create a hello function, and it's going to have, default arguments in the parameters that are passed in, and I'm going to use an F string because F strings are cool, and you end up with code that looks a little bit like this. Now, of course, few years on into your career, you've heard about design patterns and object orientation, and you're feeling confident and you're enjoying yourself because technology is cool and it's kind of fun, and so you create a hello class. Oh man, where do I even start with this? Okay, it's a thing, definitely a thing, but after having to maintain such spaghetti code as an experienced engineer, and I know because I'm over 50, so I've been doing this for 20 more plus years. Life's too short, young coders. Don't write code like that. Really, simplicity is the best. So an experienced developer would do what the beginner was doing and just print hello world. But of course, there's that legendary beast, the virtuoso programmer, and what do they say? We don't even need to hello world anyway, okay? Code that's not written, code that's deleted, can't have bugs in it, you don't need to maintain it, and you don't need to have to write unit tests for it, okay? So what this virtuoso coder has done is stepped outside of the problem and is looking from a higher level view, rather than paying attention to the code or the technical problem or the fact that they're having fun jazzing about with classes, okay? They're thinking, do we actually need this? Now, given such engineering of a dubious quality, we sometimes try to spin what we're up to in a positive light. And of course, who wants to look like a moron when you're talking to technical people? Of course, people kind of go along with, if you blind them with science. And we find ways to distract attention away from anything actually helpful, useful, or meaningful. We're very good at that in our industry. We'd rather focus on something meaningless, actually, but which to a non-coder looks very significant. And I want to draw your attention to a slide from a recent presentation that I attended about UV. Now, there's nothing wrong with UV as a project, but this measurement of success through the medium of GitHub stars hit me front and center as, well, hang on a second, the number of GitHub stars. We might as well be measuring orangutans again, okay? For all the meaningfulness that a graph such as this gives us, okay? Actually asking what this graph actually means is a very good question, because what it actually means is this project has great PR and a wonderful DevRel team. Okay, and I want to say well done to that team as well. You're doing a cracking good job, and well done to the UV team for making something really quite spectacular. But I want to draw your attention to the presentation of the kind of the PR, as it were. Perhaps we can all agree there are more important or helpful things to which we should be paying attention when it comes to coding. But what are these more important things to which we should be paying attention? How do we find out what these are? Well, no, we look at best practices, right? This is going to be good. I can see some of you already shaking your head like this, going, oh no. So AI was bound to make an appearance at some point, and you can't help but be amazed by some of the amazing results it produces. What I find interesting is how we pay attention to the outputs from AI. That it looks convincing doesn't necessarily mean that what the AI is telling you is correct. I'm also delightfully amazed at the way in which AI misdirects its attention, often with comic or unfortunate side effects. Let's just see. Oh, is that the right answer? No. An elephant's tail actually covers its bum. Now, interestingly for me, I was working with some academic friends at Tufts University in Boston last year, and they were telling me they did a study on how people were using AI to fulfill their coursework. And those folks who had a background already in coding were asking sensible questions, surprisingly enough, and the AI was giving them sensible answers, unsurprisingly. But those folks who had never coded before, this was their first encounter with code, were asking all sorts of ridiculous things. And of course, what was the AI doing? It was just making stuff up, which is essentially what the AI is doing anyway, okay? It wasn't a helpful thing, okay? Perhaps taking advice from an AI is not best practice. It's often fun, but I always have to check my code if I've been using, say, Copilot with GitHub. So I want to know, where does all this best practice come from anyway? So actually, and I include myself in this next statement, beware people who offer themselves as gurus, who promote a system or offer pithy advice about best practices. Paying attention to them can often be detrimental simply because you cede responsibility for thinking for yourself. And that's very important. This is also perhaps true when paying attention to AI. We're ceding our thinking to a machine. The computer says so in such a convincing manner, so it must be right. Actually, please check your code. And here's the thing about such best practices. They're often actually really stupid and rely on the inherent intelligence and humanity of the participants to ensure that they are actually meaningful. Just look at the poor reputation agile methodology currently has these days, as rules, processes, and best practices are enforced at the expense of, well, you know, actual intelligence, insight, or compassionate ways of working. Such tropes are often satirized, and perhaps the most famous one in terms of developers is Doug Zonger's, I don't believe I'm about to do this, is Doug Zonger's chicken. In the early 2000s, Doug wrote an academic paper that followed all the guidelines, conventions, and best practices of a computer science report, but it only contains the word chicken. He also gave a classic academic conference presentation containing just the word chicken. It can be found on YouTube, and I encourage you to watch it. Of course, we Python developers are far beyond being sent up for our own coding practices, right? Hold on to your hats. Chicken.py. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 sauce chicken. Chicken, pip install chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, chicken, chicken. GitHub chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, chicken, chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Underscore chicken, arg chicken, chicken, egg, chicken, 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 chicken. Chick, chicken, 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 arg chicken. Chicken, try the chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken. Packaged chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Read the chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Community chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. Chicken, 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 chicken. 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 Chicken, 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 chicken. Pool, poulet, 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 pool. Zit alors. Chicken, 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 pool, pool, pool request. Pool, 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 chicken, 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 chicken. No more chickens. I must apologise, but I always wanted to try that stunt, and now I have, thanks to PyCon Portugal. You've been very patient with me. But in case you've not been paying attention, I'm attempting to use humour to make a very serious point. Computers are not just machines for rapidly evaluating logical instructions. They are a medium through which we share and express our values, cultures, social world, and forms of life. They are only valuable because we are able to create and express things of significance with computers. Furthermore, the way we express things with computers, and that we choose this form of expression, is also of cultural significance. Like other forms of creative endeavour, computers reflect those who make, inhabit, and collaborate through such a medium. Computers shine when they enlarge us in an affirmative, fulfilling, humane, creative, and expressive way. Yet computing just for the sake of computers, with no regard for culture or human beings, is a diminished, inhumane, and insular form of ignorance. As we have seen, our world is polluted by complicated and unpleasant computerized gizmos, intelligent yet crushingly stupid conversational agents, programmable coffee makers, bleh, automatic toilet flushers, most of which are banal or frustrating to use. Such a shallow, invasive, and unfulfilling world of computing is perhaps inevitable. It reflects our failure to think creatively when we focus on automating things in the most trivial, complicated, or inconvenient manner. But there's hope. By highlighting such problematic states of affairs is helpful, because then we can start to compensate and rebalance. Now, I want to make it clear, I'm a software engineer. I like technology, okay? It's not that technology is intrinsically bad. Rather, the way we pay attention to it is often thoughtless, shallow, and ill-judged. There are many different ways to pay attention to the world, and by focusing on the whole, or parts thereof, each illuminates the other, depending on the sort of attention we pay to it. The world is independent of us, yet how we pay attention to the world reveals the world to us in a certain sort of a way. Such creative attention is a potent and fluid process of encountering, understanding, and expressing. We discern the universe and also change the universe through our discerning it. How we choose to pay attention, for it is certainly a choice, is a significant creative and moral act. It both makes and enlarges the world. Often we make this difficult. We forget to pay attention in the way we're paying attention to ourselves, each other, and what's going on in the universe outside. Now, an inevitable musical metaphor illustrates what I mean. As a performer, I could just play in a mechanical yet very accurate manner, only paying attention to the technical or formal aspects of performing a piece of music. Yet this is clearly a diminished performance because of the absence of attention to expression, feeling, or what I would call ensemble, which is how I communicate with my fellow musicians and the audience. Those aspects of being a musician are called musicianship. Now, the former attention to musical technique is only worthwhile if the latter attention to musicianship is also present. To be a good musician, you need to bring to bear many different ways of paying attention, each of which contributes to a new, unique entity containing and combining all of these integrated aspects. Such transcending of pure technique to create something larger than the sum of its parts applies just as well to our work as software engineers. If you're just thinking about the code, you're doing it wrong. We pay attention in this creative manner because it gives us an enlarged, affirmative and stimulating way to participate in and transform our world. Put bluntly, it brings meaning to our lives. Perhaps the most important thing to which we can pay attention is ourselves. Now, I like this quote. It's not mine. But here's the secret. Oh, Guru, what is the secret of success? Good judgment. How do you get good judgment? Experience. How do you get experience? Bad judgment. So, to what we pay attention is important. How we pay attention is equally consequential, but often unconscious. Considering why we pay attention is perhaps most significant, because it's an engaging, poignant, and sadly neglected opportunity for self-examination. And I sincerely hope we all find a way to pay attention in a more compassionate, creative, and magnified manner, especially as we work as programmers. Personally, I can't help but feel the missing part of our relationship with computers is an emphasis on things like culture, contemplation and creativity, activities and aspects of our lives that are affirmative, healing, empowering, raise up our existence, or provoke useful reflection and personal growth. Contrast this vision with our current technical world. Social media is anything but social. It's an efficient advertising laboratory that turns humanity into lab rats caged in echo chambers of digitally digested packets of small-mindedness. Artificial intelligence, metaverse, and blockchain and other buzzwords are nerdy PR for the clever use of computers to unsatisfactorily automate human activity, including all our latent prejudices, as we all know. Computer games are mostly beautiful-looking yet formulaic variations on a theme, target-driven and hardly allow a player to express themselves. And of course, no aspect of life is too small to be solved by an app available on your mobile device. This is a peculiarly problematic outlook. It's as if we're all broken and we need technology to fix us. My challenge to you is to rise above a merely technical view of computers. I hope you imagine, create, and participate in a meaningful, authentic, and engaging culture expressed with and through computers, because they are amazing machines, and it is such a privilege for us to have the skill to be able to create this sort of magic with such technology. So, what I hope for is we have a culture in which computers become a medium for affirmative, liberating, and expressive activities that enlarge ourselves, our world, and our place in it. Thank you very much. That's it. Yeah, the rant's over. So, I know we had time issues, and the person who's kind of doing that, I don't know, it's coffee break now. I guess to reset, we can just say, if you want to have a chat, I'm a friendly guy, come and say hello. If you've got something you want to say now, perhaps if you've got a question, now would be a good time to very quickly, if you've got the microphone. Do we have any questions?
Hey, Nicholas.
Hey.
So thanks for the insightful, provocative presentation. This doesn't work. I can speak up. Okay. So thanks for the insightful and provocative presentation. It's all about tech and people, I think. But the chicken thing, right? We're in Portugal, right? So you should do that in Portuguese. Can you do that in Portuguese? Do you know the word? Yeah, that's it. So do a bit of frango for me, please.
Frango.
Yeah.
Frango?
Frango. Yeah, frango.
Frango. Frango. Okay. Frango. Ah, it doesn't work. Frango. Oh my gosh, my slides have gone crazy. Frango. I don't even know what I'm saying now. Frango. And then we get to the French, of course. Poulet. There are other kind of discussions. Honestly, I didn't plan this. This was done as a joke in the early days of COVID. And my French friend Bruno kind of got involved with the French stuff. But there's a whole discussion if you go look at the issues on, can we have Chinese chicken? Can we have German chicken? Can we have other? So anyway, the pull requests are there. Okay. Frango. Any more questions? One over there. You'll need the microphone though. So who's got the microphone? Arriving. So musical interlude. Oh, okay, here we go.
Okay. Just a quick question. When we have a world where complexity is usually seen as value, how can we simplify things like you said there? Because most of the times when you have something that we have to do for a client, if we simplify it too much, there's not enough value. So we usually tend to complicate things. So there's enough value. So there's a chicken and egg.
Hey, this is the theme for the conference. You make a really great point, and there is no answer, really. I guess this is the best you can do. You're going to make mistakes in your career. I know I've made many. Please ask me about the time where I managed to be a part of deleting the credit card database at The Guardian. They weren't pleased about that, I can tell you. It's inevitable. No matter how hard you try, things are going to go wrong. And what do I mean by wrong? Well, there's clearly, don't delete the database is definitely a wrong thing to do. But wrong in terms of, I asked for a thing, and you've given me something completely different. And that's because I wasn't paying attention to what you were asking. Okay, so a large part of what we do as software engineers, and again, I'm just as guilty as anybody else of doing this, is I see a new technology that's kind of cool and exciting to use, and I go, ha, watch me. And then off I go and have a play around with it, okay? And then, of course, given a hammer, everything looks like a nail, okay? Perhaps what we need to do is cultivate a way of expanding our view of the world and maybe being a little bit more humane about it. I think maybe architecture, I mean built architecture, not computer architecture, is a way that we can pay attention because they think very hard. I know a few architects, they think very hard, or good ones do. I've seen some of the buildings in London recently, I'm not quite sure, but they think very hard about how a building affects the people who are passing through it and using it. And perhaps we should cultivate a similar sort of way of paying attention. Because let's face it, you're on your phone and social media, their business is literally how many impressions of adverts can we get from people, so they design algorithms to keep you clicking. Okay? That's borderline unethical, in my opinion. Okay? And speaking as a former teacher, and I was a teacher at the time of Tamagotchi, I can tell you the amount of time wasted with these awful devices and kids not paying attention to what perhaps they should be was a tragedy, really. Anyway, what a jolly answer. We're all doomed. Any more questions? Otherwise, it's coffee and you can all wake up. No? Okay, thank you. You've been a great audience.